An ordinary morning takes a disturbing turn when a reckless white cop slams into an elderly black woman at a crosswalk. His immediate reaction? Blame. But the calm silence in her eyes hides something he can't yet see. The bystanders watch, some recording as the tension builds. Then she speaks, and everything shifts. "Get out of the damn road, lady. What are you, blind?" The shout cracked through the morning air like a whip. Downtown Atlanta buzzed with its usual rush. Pedestrians crossed with coffee cups in hand. Delivery vans rumbled through narrow lanes. The city never paused, not even for moments like this. The crosswalk light was green. The elderly black woman walked with a slight hunch, gripping her, silver cane in one hand and a folded grocery list in the other. Her stride was steady. Unhurried, she wore a deep blue trench coat, worn but spotless, and her natural grey curls peeked from under a soft wool hat. She had almost reached the sidewalk when the screech of tires tore through the noise. A patrol car, speeding far above the limit, cut through the intersection. It should have stopped. It didn't. With a brutal thud, the metal bumper clipped her hip. She twisted, crumpled onto the pavement, cane flying from her hand. Gasps rose from both sidewalks like a choir of disbelief. One woman dropped her phone. A teenager hit a record. Doors slammed. The cop got out, red-faced and puffing. Officer Travis Cooper, tall, built, 39, pale as his badge and twice as arrogant. He didn't check on her. He didn't kneel. He didn't even ask if she was alive. Instead, he pointed a finger. "You people think the world owes you everything. I had the right of way." The crowd grew. No one said anything, but their eyes, they said enough. Some filmed, others stood frozen. A man in a UPS uniform muttered under his breath, "Nah, man, you messed up." The woman didn't scream. She didn't cry. She slowly sat up, brushing grit from her coat like it was nothing but dust from an old book. Officer Cooper strode forward and snatched the cane off the ground. "You should be arrested for jaywalking," he barked, waving it like it was a weapon. Her eyes lifted to meet his, no anger, no fear, just calm, controlled, sharp. Then, a single action. She reached inside her coat pocket and retrieved a leather-bound wallet. Slowly, deliberately, she opened it, flipped it toward him. The badge glinted, his. "Hand froze? Federal?" She didn't answer. Her voice came soft, aged, but razor-clear. The camera's still rolling. He turned. Half the crowd had their phones out now, streaming, watching, judging. "I didn't know," he stammered. "I thought you were—" He didn't finish the sentence. She stood up, shaky but proud, and took back her cane. Her words dropped like stone. "Officer Cooper, you just hit your superior." Gasps again. Someone whispered, "Oh, damn." Cooper's face lost all color. He tried to say something, anything, but the words jammed in his throat. She turned to the crowd and spoke just one sentence before walking away. "I'll see you at the station." And just like that, she left him there, in uniform, in shock, in public disgrace, while the world around him recorded his fall in real time. The woman disappears into a waiting black car. No one knows her name, yet. But the badge she carries, it doesn't just open doors, it breaks careers. The video hit the internet before Cooper even made it back to the station. Clipped, filtered, reposted. 30 seconds of fury, 10 seconds of silence, 3 words that would haunt him. "You hit your superior." By noon, it had over 800,000 views. By 1 o'clock, news outlets were running headlines like "Atlanta cop assaults elderly woman with federal badge" and "Officer calls elderly woman blind. She turns out to be his boss." Inside the precinct, Cooper sat stiff in the briefing room. Sweat clung to his uniform like guilt. The TV in the corner looped the footage silently. No one looked at him. No one joked. Not even Alvarez, his usual partner, who always had something smart to say. The silence was worse than shouting. His captain, A stone-faced black woman named Regina Miles stood at the head of the room with her arms crossed. She didn't sit. She didn't blink. "You want to tell me what the hell happened out there?" she asked finally. Cooper licked his dry lips. "I didn't know who she was." "That's your excuse?" Her voice sharpened. She stepped into traffic. "I didn't. Hit her hard. She had the right of way, Cooper, and you didn't just hit her. You mocked her. You tried to humiliate her. On camera." He flinched. "I didn't know." "And if she wasn't a federal agent, it'd still be okay?" she asked, her voice like a blade. No answer. She leaned forward. "You're being placed on desk duty, effective immediately. No weapon, no patrol." "What?" "You're suspending me over a misunderstanding." "I'm protecting the badge," she snapped. "Something you clearly forgot how to do." She stormed out, heels echoing like a judge's gavel. Cooper sat back, fists clenched. He'd been with the force 12 years. Never a real complaint. Just comments. The kind HR always waved off, until now, until someone more powerful decided she wasn't going to be ignored. Across the city, in a dimly lit office on the 8th floor of a nondescript federal building, a man in a gray suit watched the same footage. His name was Elijah Connors, Internal Affairs Liaison, quiet, methodical, unimpressed by most things. He watched the video once, then again, then paused it on her face. He picked up the desk phone and dialed. "She's back," he said. Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you sure? She never really left, but yes, that's her. What's she doing in Atlanta?" "No idea." But Cooper picked the wrong target. The voice on the line hissed, "Find out what she's planning." Elijah nodded once, as if the call were just another item on a checklist. "I'll handle it." In the small brick apartment on the edge of Vine City, the woman sat with a cup of chamomile tea. Her hip ached, but she didn't flinch. The lights were low, and the TV volume was off. She didn't need to hear the headlines. She was the headline, her. Kane rested against the arm of the chair. Her badge lay in a velvet box nearby, closed, quiet. Her name was Langston, and she wasn't just any federal agent. She was the one they called when things needed cleaning, from the inside out. She hadn't meant to make a scene, but when injustice slaps you first, sometimes, you slap back harder. She sipped her tea, slow and steady. Outside, the city buzzed. Inside, her silence roared, because the game had just begun. And Officer Cooper, he had no idea who he had touched. Not yet, but he would. Very soon. The metal clink of his gun being dropped into the evidence locker was louder than it should have been. "Sign here," the sergeant said flatly, sliding the clipboard toward him without eye contact. Cooper signed. Then his badge. Then the ID. Each item felt like a part of him being peeled off. Not out of guilt, but because of her. He walked down the hallway past the break room, and every conversation hushed the moment he passed. No jokes, no nods. Even Alvarez avoided his eyes. He reached his desk, a temporary one near the printer, wedged beside filing cabinets that smelled like old paper and regret. Cooper dropped into the chair and stared at the blank monitor. A desk cop. After 12 years. Because some old woman pretending to be federal got lucky with a badge, or so he still told himself. He clicked open his messages. HR, legal, media, departmental review. His name was a problem now, a headline, a liability. He slammed the keyboard once, low and controlled. No one flinched, no one cared. He picked up his phone and scrolled through Twitter. There it was again, the clip of him yelling, the slow motion of the hit, the badge flash, the way she said, "You hit your superior," the hashtags, "Das Langston," "Jazz Crosswalk Justice." You'd be power in silence. Who the hell was she? In her living room, Langston adjusted the height of her cane. Her fingers moved with the calm precision of someone trained in a dozen silent skills, none of which were listed on any resume. She wasn't just a name in the system, she was the system before she walked away from it. But there were rules, even. The system couldn't break, and now she was back. She opened a dusty folder from the drawer beside her. Inside, a printed internal case file. Cooper's name in bold, not recent. 5 years old, buried. The woman in the complaint had vanished after. Filing it, moved cities, changed numbers. Langston hadn't. She'd remembered. She pulled out another paper. A list. 4 officers. Cooper's name was only the start. There was a knock at her door. She stood, cane steady in her left hand, and opened it. Elijah Connors stood outside in a grey suit, just as quiet as he'd always been. "You want tea?" she asked. "I'd prefer answers," he said, stepping inside. "You'll get both." Back at the precinct, Regina Miles watched the footage again. Every time she played it, something else twisted in her stomach. It wasn't just what Cooper said. It was how he said it, like he'd done it before, like it wasn't even unusual. She picked up her desk phone and called the city's civilian review board. "This is Captain Miles. I need past misconduct files." Reopened, starting with Officer Travis Cooper. The voice on the other end hesitated. "Are you sure? That'll stir up—" "I'm not asking for suggestions." Click. She stared at the screen one more time. The moment Langston stepped forward, the badge flash, that calm look, like she was 5 steps ahead. And maybe she was. Regina leaned back in her chair, file open in front of her. Langston. Not just an agent, former director of internal tactical oversight, quietly retired. No press, no ceremony, just gone. Until now. Regina read the notes again. Deployed in undercover capacity, special clearance. Authority to override local law enforcement chain of command if systemic abuse confirmed. Untraceable through standard databases. She exhaled. What the hell were you doing at that crosswalk? There were no public records, no press mentions, but the name Langston used to mean one thing behind closed federal doors. Accountability with teeth. She closed the file. The list Langston had handed off to Elijah Connors the day before was still sealed. Regina hadn't looked until now. She opened the envelope. 4 names. 3 are still active. 1, Travis Cooper, circled in red. Meanwhile, Cooper sat in his car outside his own apartment, watching the city slow into twilight. No uniform, no weapon, no badge. He hadn't told his wife yet. He hadn't answered his brother's texts. He was too busy reading comments online like scars. "You messed with the wrong one. She should have swung that cane. About damn time." He scrolled further, screenshots of internal complaints, leaked reports. How? Who? His hands trembled on the steering wheel, rage and fear mixing like oil and fire. He slammed the horn once for no reason. He wanted to believe this would blow over. But it wasn't just about the crosswalk anymore. This felt targeted, like someone was tearing open the files he thought were buried. Langston stood at her apartment window, watching the street lamps flicker on. She didn't smile, didn't blink, just sipped her tea. Elijah sat across from her, one ankle on his knee, observing like always. "You're not back just for Cooper," he said. "No. You want the whole house of cards." "I want the wind to blow through it," she replied. He looked down at the list again. "You circled him. He's the weakest. When he falls, the others scatter. And then we see what roaches run when the light comes on." He shook his head almost admiringly. "You were always the quiet storm." Langston's eyes didn't move. "And you always watched too long before you ran." He smirked. "You're planning something." "I already planned it," she replied. Elijah raised an eyebrow. She turned from the window, finally facing him fully. "It starts tomorrow." He stood, sliding the list back into his inner pocket. "And ends when the system remembers who built it." He paused at the door. "Are you sure you're ready for war?" She lifted her cane. "I don't need war, just gravity. Let everything fall like it's supposed to." The door clicked shut behind him, and Langston sat alone with her thoughts, which had always been more dangerous than weapons. Regina dialed Internal Affairs again. No answer, not voicemail. Just silence. She hung up and leaned forward, elbows pressing into her desk, jaw clenched. Something was off. She opened the precinct network, trying to access Cooper's past misconduct reports again. Access denied, restricted, clearance level 5. She frowned. Level 5 meant federal intervention, and that meant Langston had already pulled strings no one else could even reach. Regina stared at her screen, like it might blink first. She had been on the force for 19 years. She had weathered protests, civil suits, policy changes. But this was a surgical purge, and Langston was the scalpel. Cooper sat at the bar across the street from his apartment, swirling ice in his glass like it might tell him something useful. "I didn't mean to hit her," he muttered to no one. The bartender didn't answer, just kept wiping the same spot on the counter. "I said it was an accident." Still silent. Cooper looked around. Every TV showed the same woman, Langston. Her image is grainy but commanding, quiet. That badge froze mid-flip. It played like folklore. She hadn't even raised her voice, and yet she destroyed him without lifting a finger. He pulled out his phone, opened the precinct app, and tried to log in. Access denied. He laughed bitterly. Even the app had turned against him. Then a buzz, a message. "Unknown number. Your files won't protect you. You buried too many names. Some of them remember." He stared at the screen. Blood drained from his face. He stood abruptly, knocking over the bar stool, and stumbled out into the night. Elijah Connors met Regina in the parking garage beneath the federal building, the type of place where secrets echoed, louder than footsteps. "She's moving faster than I expected," Regina said. She always did. Regina folded her arms. "What's the end game here? She's not trying to go public. No, she's aiming for internal detonation. Quiet trials, career removals, systemic cleaning." Regina frowned. "Why not expose them?" Elijah looked up at the concrete ceiling. "Because she believes the system doesn't need burning. It needs remembering." Regina's voice dropped. "And Cooper, he's the spark, but he's not the fire." That night, in her small apartment lit only by a reading lamp, Langston sat with a pen and a fresh envelope. She wrote one name on the front. No address, just a name. Inside, she placed an old photo. 4 men, 1 woman, all in uniform. One of them was Cooper. She folded it once, then added a handwritten note. "I remember you. Do you remember her?" She sealed the envelope and placed it beside the others. By morning, they'd all be gone, mailed to places no one expected, to people who had slept peacefully for too long. The first envelope landed at the downtown newspaper. Office just before sunrise. No return address, no markings. Inside, a photo. 5 officers. Faces young, grinning, arms slung around each other like brothers. One wore a patrolman's badge with the name Cooper barely visible. Taped to the bottom was a single line of text. One of them retired. 3 stayed dirty. One became a ghost. She's not a ghost anymore. By noon, 3 more packages had been reported. 1 showed up at the district attorney's office. 1 arrived at Internal Affairs in D.C., and the 4th, it landed on the desk of Channel 9's senior crime reporter. He knew exactly what it was, and he knew what not to do. Report it. Not yet, because this wasn't a scoop. This was a warning. Regina sat in her office, watching the walls close in. "You knew her," Elijah said from across the desk. "I worked a case with her once," Regina said. 15 years ago, she was different, quiet, scary smart, the kind that made the whole room get still when she entered." "Then why didn't she come to you first?" Regina looked up, eyes tired. "Because I'm in the system. She's not." Elijah tapped the desk. "And now?" "She's pulling thread." Elijah nodded. "She's betting the whole sweater unravels." Cooper parked his car outside an old dive bar 2 towns over. He didn't want to go in, but the message he'd gotten said midnight. "Come alone, tell no one." He pushed through the door. The place smelled like wood rot and old secrets. At a back booth, a familiar face looked up from a whiskey glass. Officer Brett Halter, retired 2 years ago. Also on the list. You got one too? Cooper asked. Halter slid a photo across the table. It was the same one, 5 of them in uniform, all smiles. From before they got bitter, before they got comfortable breaking the rules. I thought she died, Halter said. Cooper sat down. She didn't. I heard she was sick. Heart something. Nope. She's alive, and she's making us ghosts. Halter downed his drink. She can't go public with this stuff. It'd tear everything down. Cooper's eyes narrowed. That's the point. No, Halter said, shaking his head. She's not exposing us. She's erasing us, quietly, one by one. Cooper clenched his fists. What do we do? Halter looked at him like he was an idiot. You pray she hasn't sent your envelope yet. Langston watched the news scroll across the bottom of her screen. Anonymous packages disrupt city leadership. Photo from sealed police case stuns public. Former federal agent suspected in internal leak. She sipped her tea, unbothered. Let them guess. Let them spin. She wasn't hiding. She was revealing. She reached into the file box beside her and pulled the last envelope. It had no name, no photo, just one folded document. It was blank. Waiting. Because some names didn't need evidence. They just needed a chance to finally feel fear. Regina waited until the station emptied out. Past midnight, she slid into the archive room alone, carrying her captain's keycard and a folder marked "Closed, Sealed, the..." Lights buzzed overhead, casting long shadows against metal shelves stacked with dusty case files. She found the one Langston had named first. Complaint number 4821B, filed March 7, 2017. Victim Letitia Moore. Officer named Travis Cooper. Allegation: physical intimidation. Racial slurs. Retaliation during traffic stop. Outcome: case dismissed due to lack of sufficient evidence. Note: victim relocated out of state 2 weeks later. Case marked inactive. Regina read every word. Her hands didn't shake, her eyes did, because the signatures at the bottom, Internal Affairs, Precinct Command, City Review, all had one thing in common. They'd failed her. And Cooper? He'd gotten a commendation that same month. Regina closed the file and stood in the cold, humming room with years of forgotten pain stacked around her. Langston hadn't leaked these files to burn bridges. She'd leaked them because no one else ever would. And, for the first time in years, Regina stopped thinking like a captain. She started thinking like a citizen. Outside the precinct, the night was thick with humidity. Regina stepped into the air like she was surfacing from deep underwater. Elijah was waiting near her car, leaning against the hood. "You looked," he said. "I did." "And?" "She's right." He nodded slowly, solemnly. "You going to help her?" "I think I already am," she said. He handed her a burner phone. "Langston said you'd need this." Regina looked at it. "What for?" She said the next name on the list won't go down quietly. Langston stood alone in her apartment, sliding a red line through Cooper's name. Not dead, not ruined, just exposed. Next was Halter, a man who'd buried cases so deep even the victims forgot what justice smelled like. Langston opened the second file. This one didn't just have complaints. It had cover-ups, bribes, medical records. One photo showed a teenage boy in a hospital bed. Langston's hand paused on that page. She closed the folder and took a long breath. This wasn't revenge. This was repaired, and it had to be done right. One name at a time. Cooper woke up in sweat, the TV in his apartment still. Played last night's news. He hadn't slept. The message was still in his phone. "Do you remember her?" And now Halter wasn't answering. Regina hadn't called. The department had gone quiet. Even the precinct login portal was shut off to him. He wasn't just suspended now. He was forgotten, cut loose, unprotected. He looked out the window. A white envelope sat on his windshield. No stamp, No address, just his name. He didn't open it. He didn't have to. It hit the news just after sunrise. Breaking: retired officer linked to hospitalized teen in 2015. Civil rights complaint: Brett Halter's face splashed across every screen, every post, every inbox. The story included medical records, a mother's statement, a sealed payout from a private settlement, and a disturbing line from a leaked body cam transcript. You people should be used to being on the ground. The city didn't pause this time. It reacted. By noon, protesters gathered in front of police headquarters. Chants rose, signs waved. We remember. Justice never expires. She's doing your job. Regina watched from her window, the noise growing louder with every hour. Inside, officers sat stiff in their chairs. Phones rang non-stop. HR sent an emergency email telling everyone to stay inside. No one was safe from questions now, especially the ones who thought they were untouchable. Halter never left his house that day, not even to check the mail. He sat in his recliner, remote in hand, staring at the news coverage. His phone buzzed non-stop. Numbers he didn't recognize, reporters, former colleagues. One message stood out, no number, just words. Do you remember his mother's face? He threw the phone across the room, but the words stayed, burned behind his eyes. Langston walked the shaded path behind St. Martin's Church. The steps creaked beneath her as she sat on the bench beneath the willow tree. A woman sat waiting, face aged by sorrow, not time. Her name was Monica Bell, mother of the boy Halter had. Sent to the hospital, Langston handed her a thick envelope. Everything I could find, she said softly. Monica opened it, hands trembling. Photos, documents. A forgotten voice memo from a lawyer who'd once told her, "Nothing more we can do." Tears formed but didn't fall. She looked up. "Why now?" Langston answered, eyes calm. "Because I was too late then. I'm not too late now." Monica took a long breath. "They said he settled. Quiet money." Langston nodded. "And silence. Bought in bulk. But that's over." For a moment the willow leaves whispered above them and the world stood still. "I thought no one remembered," Monica whispered. "I didn't forget," Langston replied, "and neither had the city." Inside the precinct, Regina gathered her command team. She held up two names, Cooper, Halter. "This isn't just a PR crisis," she said. "This is a reckoning." Her officers stared back, some defiant, others ashamed. One asked, "Are we really siding with her?" Regina answered without blinking, "We're not siding with her, we're siding with truth." Another spoke up. "What if we're next?" Regina paused, then said the only thing she could. "Then you better hope you've lived right." Langston marked the second red line. 2 down, 2 to go, and still. No statement, no interviews, no threats, just quiet exposure. Truth left in daylight. That's all it took. Because when power collapses, it's never loud at first. It's silent, like breath leaving a liar's lungs. Regina pored over the files Langston had exposed. She wasn't just looking for crimes anymore. She was looking for the cover-ups, and now she could see it clearly. Each name on Langston's list wasn't just abusive. They were connected. 4 officers, all signed off on each other's misconduct reports, all gave statements defending one another, all buried complaints together, like a chain, not of command, of protection, a brotherhood of silence. Regina leaned, back in her chair, the weight of it pressing into her chest. For years, she had prided herself on balance, doing her job, serving the public, navigating the line, but there was no line anymore. There was only what Langston had made her see, and now she couldn't unsee it. Langston stood on the porch of a modest home in Decatur. She knocked once. A young woman in her 30s opened the door, sharp eyes, calm face. She looked like someone who'd grown up too fast. "You're her," the woman said. Langston gave a quiet nod. The woman didn't ask her name. She didn't. "Me too. I'm Denise," she said. "My dad was Sergeant Lee." Langston remembered. Lee was the one who filed a corruption report in 06. He had 3 days left before retirement. Then his house caught fire under mysterious conditions. The report vanished. Lee died. Langston had never forgotten that case. "I found this in his garage before we moved," Denise said, handing her a folder. Inside, a handwritten complaint, a copy of an audio tape, receipts, witness names, the original list. Denise's eyes welled. "He tried. No one listened." Langston placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm listening now." At the precinct, an emergency meeting was called behind closed doors. Regina faced the city review board. 6 officials, tense, defensive. They questioned her loyalty, her judgment, her association with a rogue federal. She interrupted them mid-sentence. "Langston isn't rogue. She's righteous." One board member frowned. "You're defending a vigilante." "She's exposing your mistakes," Regina snapped, "and you should thank her. Because if she hadn't done it this way, you'd be wearing this scandal on national news." The room fell silent. Regina leaned forward. "Do your jobs, or move." And with that, she left the room, unapologetic. Back in her apartment, Langston pinned Denise's documents beside her own. The map was bigger now. The damage is deeper. Names, dates, arrows, cover-ups layered over decades. And at the center, something far worse than Cooper or Halter, a command officer still in uniform, still smiling in public, still untouchable. Langston picked up her pen. She didn't write his name, not yet. She circled it, not in red, in black final, and above the circle she wrote a single phrase, "Collapse the root, or it regrows." Langston ironed her coat slowly that morning, dark navy, pressed, clean, the same one she wore the day Cooper hit her, the day this all began. But today wouldn't end with a cane in the street. Today would end with a name, one spoken loud, in daylight. In front of cameras, she folded the coat gently and laid her badge inside the left pocket. The original one, the one they tried to bury with her. She slid a small black envelope into her bag. It was time, downtown. The city held a ceremony outside City Hall, a community police healing event. Banners, music, smiles. Deputy Commissioner Gerald M. Sloan stood at the podium, his polished smile flashing to the crowd, flanked by media and handshakes. "Accountability," he said, "isn't a threat, it's a promise, and we remain committed to justice for all communities." Langston stepped onto the sidewalk like a shadow slipping into sunlight. She didn't rush, she didn't raise her voice, she just walked, cane steady, until she reached the security barricade. Someone recognized her. Gasps spread like wind over dry leaves. Phones went up. Sloan paused. Then I froze. Langston didn't break eye contact. She raised the black envelope. A security guard moved to stop her, but Sloan lifted his hand. Whether in fear or recognition, no one could tell. She stepped forward, one step beyond the barricade. She handed the envelope directly to Sloan. "You don't need to read it," she said softly. "You already know what's in it." He didn't take it, so she tucked it into his inner suit pocket like a mother adjusting a child's collar. Then she leaned in. "I'm not the ghost you buried. I'm the storm you ignored." Then she turned around, back straight, pace slow, and walked away in complete silence. No reporters shouted, no guards stopped her, no one breathed, and Sloan, he never finished his speech. Regina watched it unfold live from her office. Her phone blew up with texts. City Hall, the mayor's office, 3 news anchors. She didn't answer any of them. Instead, she opened her drawer and pulled out her own envelope. 1. Langston had sent her directly inside a document, confidential, a timeline, a pattern, Sloan's name at the top, and a note. "If you say nothing, you're part of it." Regina grabbed her keys. The mayor was going to listen today. Whether he liked it or not, Sloan sat in his black SUV 30 minutes later, the envelope unopened. His hands shook. Inside it, he knew what waited. The records, the payouts, the signatures, the names. One of them was his son-in-law, another of his former partners. Langston had everything. She'd been watching, waiting, like smoke behind a mirror. And now the mirror had shattered. Sloane looked into the rearview mirror at his own reflection. It didn't blink, but it cracked, quietly. City Hall felt like a mausoleum. The usual buzzing chatter of aides, interns, and department heads was gone. Hallways were dimmer. Desks were still. News vans lined the streets outside, but inside no one had anything to say. Deputy Commissioner Gerald M. Sloane hadn't shown up to his office, hadn't answered calls, hadn't responded to emails, just vanished. Regina Miles climbed the marble. Stairs, a heavy leather folder tucked under her arm. Her steps echoed louder than usual. She didn't pause at the receptionist's desk. She pushed straight through the door to the mayor's private office. He looked up from his screen, startled. "Captain Miles, we need to talk," she said, her voice sharp and clear. He gestured toward the chair in front of his desk, but she remained standing. "I'm not here to take a seat," she said. "I'm here to hand you something." She placed the folder on the table and flipped it open. "Everything you've been pretending not to know is in here," she added. "Langston's files, Cooper's, complaints, Halter's payouts, and the root of all of it, Sloane." The mayor's eyes darted to the top sheet. He started reading. "Where did you get this? Does it matter?" Regina snapped. "Or are you going to ask who else has copies?" He looked up, face tightening. "You realize what this would do to us?" "It won't do anything to us," Regina said coldly. "It'll do something for the people." His hands trembled slightly as he flipped through the evidence, official signatures, time-stamped emails, victim testimony, sealed settlements, all. Roads led to one man, Sloane. "He's not just corrupt," she added. "He's the architect." The mayor pushed the file back toward her. "You want me to fire the deputy commissioner based on evidence handed over by someone who staged a public confrontation?" Regina narrowed her eyes. "You're not hearing me," she said. "This isn't just about Sloane. It's about everyone who enabled him, and if you don't act now, your name joins the chain." Silence fell again, but not the kind that came from indecision, the kind that precedes a storm. That evening, the press still hadn't heard from Sloane. The protests outside City Hall had doubled in size. People carried posters that read, "We remember. Say her name, Langston." No more hidden files. Inside newsrooms and living rooms, people were glued to their screens. And then, at 9:14 p.m., it happened. Every inbox across the city received the same subject line. Public statement. The email came from Sloane's personal government account. No press office signature, no legal disclaimer, no filter, just this. "To the people of this city, I have failed. I've looked away too many times. I've protected those I shouldn't have. I've used my position to shelter men I once called friends, even as they buried truth under uniforms. I did it in the name of stability, of reputation. But what Langston has shown me, what she has shown us, is that silence is a violence. All its own. This city deserves better than quiet corruption. I am stepping down. Effective immediately. I will cooperate with any inquiry, investigation, or review that follows. And to Langston, you were never a threat. You were a reckoning.gm. Sloane screenshots flooded social media. News anchors paused mid-sentence and read it aloud. Hands shaking. No denials. No spin, just confession. Langston didn't speak that night. She didn't need to. The city did the talking for her. At the precinct, Regina stood alone in her office, the city lights reflecting off the glass. Her phone buzzed, with texts, emails, voice messages, but she ignored them all. She was staring at a single note Langston had left inside the folder she'd sent earlier that week. "You're not here to hold the door. You're here to walk through it first." Regina breathed in deeply, slowly. She picked up her phone and called the mayor. "Let's begin," she said simply. Sloane sat alone in a dark room, his tie discarded, collar open. He hadn't slept. He hadn't eaten. He had written the email 5 hours ago and reread it 50 times since. It didn't feel like an apology. It felt like the truth. Something he hadn't spoken in decades. The quiet wasn't comforting, it was condemning. His wife was gone. His daughter had blocked his number. The badge that used to mean everything sat in a box in the corner of the room. He hadn't cried. But now, sitting in the shadows, Sloane's eyes burned, not from guilt, but from the weight of everything he'd allowed to rot under his watch. The system hadn't failed him. He had failed the system. And Langston. She hadn't just exposed him. She had stripped away every excuse, every shield, every lie. He looked toward the window and whispered, "It was always going to be you, wasn't it?" Langston sat in her chair by the window, a wool blanket over her. Knees, the hum of the city rolling in through a half-open window. She didn't celebrate, she didn't speak. She simply opened a file, the final one. This one had no red lines, no names, just a single sheet of paper with nothing written on it. She picked up her pen, pressed the tip to the paper and wrote, "Truth begins in silence." Then she added something else, her name. For years she had watched the system from the outside. She had stepped back, let it collapse. But now she will return, not to punish, but to rebuild, because justice doesn't end with confession. It begins there. The city moved differently now, not slower, not louder, just aware, like it had finally looked in the mirror and recognized something it had tried to forget. For decades, the headlines had moved on, but the people hadn't. Conversations whispered in barbershops, school murals painted in Langston's image, protest signs pinned to walls as permanent reminders instead of temporary rage. And somewhere inside that changed rhythm, Langston walked again, same cane, same pace, but a different purpose. This time, she wasn't crossing the street. She was crossing into the future. The federal building downtown still looked the same. Grey. Stone walls, steel security doors, mirrored glass that reflected nothing but sky. But the air inside, it was different. Colder, quieter, not from fear, from waiting, because word had spread. Langston was coming back, not for justice, for blueprints. The elevator ride to the top was silent. Langston stood alone. The other passengers had stepped out early, as if giving her space. When the doors opened, a junior officer stepped back as she exited. "Ma'am," he said softly, eyes wide with reverence. Langston nodded. Just once. Respect didn't need volume. It needed memory, and every face that turned toward her remembered. On the top floor, a conference room buzzed quietly with nervous energy. Regina stood by the large windows overlooking the Capitol dome, flipping through a printed copy of Langston's proposal. Elijah Connors sat to her right, tapping a pen against the table like a metronome of tension. Two federal advisors from D.C. whispered to each other, eyes on the door. When Langston entered, everything stopped. No announcement, no speech. She placed a leather folder on the table, opened it slowly, and slid its contents forward. Inside were recommendations, policies, timelines, training modules, but more importantly, names. Not the names of villains this time, the names of survivors. People who had lost something to this system, people who had never received a follow-up call after filing a complaint. Langston looked at them one by one. "This isn't just about rooting out the rot," she said. "It's about feeding what never had a chance to grow." Regina exhaled slowly. "And you're ready to lead this?" Langston shook her head. "I'm ready to build it. Leading comes later." Elijah folded his hands. "You'll need clearance, funding, legal shields." Langston raised an eyebrow. "You think I came without all three?" From her coat pocket she pulled a signed letter, the Attorney General's seal in the corner. Clearance granted. Funding approved. Legal. Autonomy secured. for an internal civilian ethics division operating alongside law enforcement, not beneath it. Elijah chuckled. You move quiet, but you move deep. Langston turned to him. That's the only way things change in a house that hates noise. 2 weeks later, Langston stood before her new team, 30 people, some former officers, some community leaders, some social workers who had testified against officers no one remembered, except Langston. She introduced herself simply, My name is Langston. No rank, no fanfare, no uniform. Most of you know me from a video, but I was never a symbol. She paused. I was silent. One that finally decided to speak. Around the room, no one fidgeted. No one looked away. They listened, because she wasn't there to inspire them. She was there to prepare them. On the other side of town, the now vacant office of Gerald Sloan was being packed into brown boxes, framed certificates, photos with presidents and police chiefs, all of it labeled and stacked. A young officer assigned to clear the room paused at one item, a printed copy of Sloan's final email statement. It had been left on his desk deliberately. Underneath it, someone had scrawled in pen. He said her name. That was what mattered. Not that he fell, but he acknowledged the one person he once erased. Langston's blueprint wasn't about revenge. It was about infrastructure. Her team would act as a silent force embedded within departments. Every precinct would be required to submit monthly audits of complaint follow-ups. Every use of force incident would be reviewed within 24 hours by a hybrid panel. Half sworn officers, half civilians. And perhaps most powerful of all, a restorative justice program that offered survivors a seat across from decision-makers, not for apology, but for policy influence. Langston's own voice wouldn't dominate these rooms, but her presence would. She had become gravity now, not pulling things down, just holding them still, long enough for the truth to finally settle. On the first day of the initiative's launch, Regina invited Langston to stand beside her during the internal announcement. The press had been kept out. This was for the people inside the badge. They stood before over 100 officers. New recruits, veterans, captains. Some respect, some are skeptical, all silent. Regina stepped forward. We've been given a mirror, she said, and we don't have the luxury of looking away anymore. She gestured to Langston. She doesn't need to speak. Her actions already did. Langston stepped forward anyway. She scanned the room, then said one sentence. If your silence protected someone once, let your voice protect someone now. She walked off stage, and the room. It didn't cheer, it didn't clap, but it shifted. You could feel it, like a building adjusting its weight after years of leaning too far in the wrong direction. That night, Langston returned home. Her apartment was exactly as she'd left it. Simple, quiet, full of shadows that no longer threatened her. She brewed tea, no honey tonight, just the bitterness, the reality. She sat by the window, the city glowing outside like a heartbeat. Not perfect, not clean, but alive. She opened her journal. One she hadn't touched in years, and wrote, Change doesn't knock. It walks in when we stop pretending the door is locked. She underlined it twice, then closed the journal, not because the story was over, because it finally had a beginning. Across the city, small things began to change. A civilian oversight center opened in the West End. Its first employee, Monica Bell, the mother who once sat under the willow tree with Langston. A new mural was painted beside the Vine City precinct. Langston's face wasn't the center. Instead, it showed her cane, left standing in the middle of the crosswalk. Under it were 4 words, She walked for us, and below that graffiti in bright red, We walk now too. The city no longer feared her, it followed her, because she had taught them something police academies and law books never could. That silence is never neutral. It's either a shield or a weapon. And Langston, She turned it into a tool, sharpened. It aimed it and then laid it down because her real weapon had never been rage, it had been returned.